Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. It's Rosh Mohammed Salih here, the editor of Five Pillars, and I'm here in a forest wood kind of area outside the Elbit factory in Leicester. Obviously, you'll know that Elbit is a weapons manufacturer which supplies war weapons for the apartheid Israeli regime, which is used to oppress and bomb the Palestinians. And what we have is, dozens of Palestinian activists, pro-Palestine activists from all over the country. They've taken a few weeks off work, some of them have taken a month off work, and they say they're going to camp out here until Elbit Systems is shut down. The Palestine Action Group organised this siege to disrupt the flow of business of Elbit, which is Israel's largest weapons company and which manufactures 85% of Israel's drone fleet. There was a heavy police presence on the ground, with riot vans deployed and a metal wall erected around the factory.
This is liberated territory. This is like the south of Lebanon. It is liberated. And you can tell that to your managers back in occupied Palestine. This is now a village. The village is called Free Palestine. These tents will be held. Now be prepared. If you have anything that you want to do, you want to play football, local people in Leicester, come and play football here. This is your territory. Say to the Imam, you want to give khutbah for Salat al-Jum'ah. Come here. This is where you do it. And most importantly, when night falls, make sure you have your cameras on and that you capture what exactly is done to try to repress what is happening here. Because the very same logic that we see practiced upon the Palestinians will be attempted upon the people that come here. Tell them in Manchester, in London, in Oldham, in Plymouth, in Portsmouth, the hundreds of thousands of people in this country that feel deeply for the Palestinian cause, this is where you need to be. This is liberated territory.
Today we're outside of Elbit Systems. Okay, this is very important. This activism has worked. Already, the protesters have managed to shut down the factory in Oldham. They've managed to shut down the headquarters in London. They've managed to basically cancel a £300 million contract with the Ministry of Defence. Because of these protests, ultimately, Elbit doesn't want to go to court because Elbit knows that it will be implicated in court, essentially. They don't want to reveal some of the secret activities that they have conducted, which, by the way, the Ministry of Defence knows about, the state knows about. It was the state that created the Zionist entity, and they will cover and they will stick up for their interests ultimately. So it's our job as activists to take it into our hands and to make that change. Enough is enough. Petitions don't work. Speaking to MPs don't work. They are part and parcel of a system which created the Zionist entity. The Zionist entity would not be here today if it's not for Britain, if it's not for America, which took the realm of leadership after Britain in 1948, post-World War II. So what's the point of appealing to MPs when MPs cannot become MPs unless they toe the line of the establishment? We've seen what's happened to the MPs like Chris Williamson, who was essentially kicked out, the likes of Ken Livingstone, who was kicked out simply for speaking facts on this matter. But it's because they were raising the consciousness of the masses to this issue that essentially they've been cancelled and they've been deplatformed and they've been removed from their sphere of influence in government. I think one of the really unfortunate realities is that the Zionist lobby has been very successful in communicating its so-called inherent power to the masses, to the extent that it's basically made the people feel a sense of despair, like they cannot do anything about the reality and they cannot do anything about the status quo. The reality is, if just enough people mobilized and took direct action, Palestine Action is an example of such an organization. I mean, if one was to just camp outside of, for example, G4S, HSBC, those other companies that are inherently complicit in the ethnic cleansing of our brothers and sisters in Palestine, if they were to disrupt their business as usual, I think the worst thing for such companies is the PR, essentially. It's ruining their reputation, it's ruining their PR. Palestine Action is a direct example of how this has been successfully done, and it's very important that we have such examples that can actually show people the reality of how change could occur, and the reality that this is very much possible. You know, it's one example, but we have a long way to go. There are 8 other factories in the UK that we need to shut down.
Day 1 of the siege passed off peacefully, but on day 2, police started to arrest activists and kettle in other protesters.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Looking after these people, you're arresting them.
We are. And
how do you think that is looking after them?
I'm going to ask you, it's obviously free will, but I'm sure they don't want to be recorded, yeah, when they've had their
Do you want to be recorded? Do you want to be filmed? They've just told me they do want to be filmed, so you just lied.
But the activists remain defiant and have pledged to stay for the long haul, and they're encouraging other people to come down to the Elbit site to show solidarity. Meanwhile, Elbit says that Palestine Action is a criminal organisation, and they'll work with police and other authorities to take action against anyone who interferes with what they call their important work.